my father's funeral, listening to people talk about all the things he'd wanted to do but never did, and I realized with absolute horror that I was living the exact same way. I was 35 years old and I'd spent the last decade playing small, playing safe, playing the role everyone expected of me. And in that moment, surrounded by flowers and grief and regret, I understood that if I died tomorrow, people would stand at my funeral and say the same things. He had so much potential. He could have done anything. I wonder why he never went for it. This is the story of how I wasted 10 years of my life being realistic, being responsible, being small, and how one devastating moment finally woke me up and gave me the courage to stop hiding and start living the life I was actually meant for. If you've been holding yourself back, if you've been making your dreams smaller to make other people comfortable, if you've been waiting for permission that's never coming, this story is for you. Because the cost of playing small isn't safety. It's your entire life. Let me take you back to where this really started. I was 25 years old, fresh out of business school with a degree my parents were proud of and dreams that scared the hell out of me. I wanted to start a company. Not just any company. I wanted to build something that mattered, something that would help people, something bold and risky and mine. I had notebooks filled with ideas, business plans I'd worked on at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep because the vision was so clear it kept me awake. I told my parents over dinner one night, my hands shaking with excitement and nervousness. I told them about the business I wanted to build, the impact I wanted to make, the life I could see so clearly in my mind. And my father, who loved me, who wanted the best for me, who was terrified of watching me fail, said the words that would echo in my head for the next 10 years. That's a nice dream, but you need to be realistic. Get a stable job first. Build some security. You can always do that other stuff later. My mother nodded in agreement, relief visible on her face that I wouldn't be taking some crazy risk. And because I loved them, because I didn't want to disappoint them, because some part of me was terrified they were right and I'd fail spectacularly, I listened. I took the safe job, the corporate position with the good salary and the clear path forward. I told myself it was temporary, just for a couple of years to build experience and savings. I told myself I'd start the business later. I put my notebooks away in a drawer and promised myself this was just being smart, being strategic, being an adult. 2 years turned into 5. 5 turned into 10. Every year I told myself, next year will be the year. Every performance review where I got praised for being reliable and hitting targets, I felt this weird mix of pride and emptiness. Every promotion that came with a bigger paycheck and more responsibility, I felt the golden handcuffs getting tighter. I was good at the job. Really good. People respected me. I climbed the ladder steadily. From the outside, I was winning. From the inside, I was dying in the slowest, quietest way possible. I dated people who were appropriate and stable instead of people who set my soul on fire. I spent weekends doing things that looked good on social media instead of things that made me feel alive. I had conversations at parties where I talked about market trends and quarterly projections instead of ideas that excited me and visions that scared me. I became an expert at making my life smaller and smaller, at fitting into the box everyone felt comfortable with, at being the version of myself that no one worried about. I was so good at playing small that I almost forgot I'd ever wanted to play big. Almost. But here's the thing about dreams you bury. They don't die quietly. They haunt you. I'd be in meetings and find myself doodling business ideas in the margins of my notes. I'd see someone else launch a company and feel this sharp pain of jealousy mixed with regret. I'd lie awake at night and wonder what would have happened if I just tried. If I'd been brave. If I'd trusted myself instead of trusting everyone's fears. The worst part wasn't the regret. It was the justification. I became a master at explaining why I couldn't pursue my dreams. The economy was unstable. I had bills to pay. I was too old now, I'd missed my window. Other people had advantages I didn't have. The market was too saturated. I didn't have the right connections. Every excuse sounded reasonable. Every reason felt valid. But underneath all of it was the truth I didn't want to face. I was scared. Scared of failing. Scared of disappointing people. Scared of wanting something big and falling short. Scared of being visible. Scared of taking up space. Scared of being too much, too ambitious, too bold. So I made myself small and I called it being realistic. My relationships suffered because I never showed up fully. How could I? I wasn't even showing up fully for myself. I attracted people who wanted the small version of me because that's the version I was offering. Every time someone got close to seeing the real me, the ambitious, intense, vision-filled person I was keeping locked away, I'd panic and either push them away or hide deeper. I had friends who stopped inviting me to certain conversations because they knew I'd deflect, play it safe, give the corporate answer. I had siblings who remembered the passionate, dream-filled version of me and looked at me with confusion and sadness, like they were watching someone slowly disappear. And I was disappearing, not physically, but in every way that mattered. The fire that used to burn in me had become embers, then ash. I woke up every morning and performed the role of someone who was fine, who had made good choices, who was living well. And I performed it so convincingly that most people believed it. Some days even I believed it. Then my father got sick. It happened fast. One of those aggressive cancers that don't give you time to prepare. From diagnosis to hospice was 4 months. In those 4 months, I watched the strongest man I knew become smaller and smaller. Not just physically, but in every way. And in those final weeks, when he could barely speak, he said something that broke me open. I played it too safe. I have so many regrets. Don't be like me. I tried to reassure him, to tell him he'd lived a good life, that he'd provided for us, that he'd done everything right. And he grabbed my hand with what little strength he had left and said, "Safe isn't the same as good." I was so busy being responsible that I forgot to be alive. Don't make my mistake. He died 3 days later. And at his funeral, listening to people share memories, I kept hearing the same theme over and over. He was so talented. He had so much potential. He could have done anything. I always wondered why he never pursued that dream he had. Every single person had a story about something my father had wanted to do but hadn't. Some business idea he'd mentioned once. Some trip he'd always talked about taking. Some passion he'd let go of to be practical. And standing there, listening to the eulogy of a life half-lived, I saw my own future with crystal clarity. If I kept going the way I was going, in 30 years someone would stand at my funeral and say the exact same things. He had so much potential. I wonder why he never went for it. That night, I went home and pulled out those old notebooks from when I was 25. 10 years of dust on dreams I'd been too scared to chase. I read through my business plans, my vision statements, my ambitious goals, and I started crying. Not gentle tears, gut-wrenching sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken inside me. Because I realized I'd let 10 years slip by. 10 years of making myself smaller. 10 years of choosing comfort over courage. 10 years of listening to fear disguised as wisdom. I was 35 years old and I'd spent a decade playing small. And for what? For security that wasn't real. For approval from people who wanted me comfortable more than they wanted me fulfilled. For a life that looked good but felt empty. I thought about all the things I hadn't done because I was being realistic. All the risks I hadn't taken because I was being responsible. All the dreams I'd postponed because I was being smart. And I realized that every single one of those words, realistic, responsible, smart, were just code words for scared. I'd been terrified of failing, so I'd failed by never trying. I'd been terrified of disappointing people, so I disappointed myself instead. I'd been terrified of taking up space, so I'd made myself invisible. And suddenly, sitting alone in my apartment at 2 a.m. surrounded by 10-year-old dreams, I got angry. Not sad, angry. Furious at myself for wasting so much time. Furious at everyone who'd convinced me to play small and called it looking out for me. Furious at a world that rewards playing safe over playing big, that celebrates comfort over courage, that tells you to be realistic when what they really mean is, don't make me uncomfortable with your ambition. The next morning, I woke up different. I can't explain it better than that. Something fundamental had shifted. That moment at my father's funeral, those words, "Don't make my mistake," had cracked something open in me that couldn't be closed again. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I sat down at my kitchen table and I wrote out every single dream I'd been making smaller. Starting the company, building something that mattered, living somewhere I actually wanted to live instead of somewhere that made career sense. Dating people who excited me instead of people who were appropriate. Having conversations about ideas instead of just networking. Taking risks. Being visible. Being bold. Being too much instead of just enough. And then I wrote one sentence at the top of the page. What if I stopped playing small and started playing to win? Not playing to not lose. That's what I'd been doing for a decade. Playing defense. Playing it safe. Playing not to fail. But playing to win. That required something I'd forgotten I had. Audacity. Over the next week, I did something radical. I started telling the truth. Not the polished, professional, socially acceptable version of the truth. The real truth. I told my mother I wasn't happy with my life and hadn't been for years. I told my closest friend that I'd been faking it, that I felt like I was slowly dying, that I couldn't do it anymore. I told my manager I was resigning, not because I had another job lined up, but because I needed to pursue something that mattered to me while I still had time. The reactions were everything I'd been afraid of for 10 years. My mother cried and said I was making a huge mistake, that my father would have wanted me to be stable and secure. My friend tried to talk me out of it, listing all the reasons it was too risky, too late, too uncertain. My manager thought I was having some kind of breakdown and tried to offer me a sabbatical instead. Everyone who loved me tried to pull me back into the comfortable cage I'd been living in. And for the first time in my entire adult life, I said no. Not rudely, not angrily, but firmly. I said, I love you, and I know you're trying to protect me, but I don't need protection from failure. I need permission to try. And if you can't give me that permission, I'm going to give it to myself. The first few months after leaving were absolutely terrifying. I'd built up this narrative in my head that once I finally went for it, once I stopped playing small, everything would magically fall into place. Didn't. It was messy and hard and full of self-doubt. I had days where I was convinced I'd made the biggest mistake of my life, that everyone had been right, that I should have stayed safe. I had moments of panic where I'd check my bank account and feel my chest tighten. I had nights where I couldn't sleep because the weight of the risk felt crushing. But here's what was different. I was alive. For the first time in 10 years, I was fully, intensely, terrifyingly alive. I was working on something that mattered to me. I was having conversations about ideas that excited me. I was meeting people who challenged me and inspired me instead of people who just wanted me to stay comfortable. I was building something that was mine, that reflected my vision and values, not someone else's idea of what I should want. I failed at things. God, did I fail? I made mistakes. I launched products that flopped. I had strategies that didn't work. I lost money. I embarrassed myself. And every single failure taught me something that 10 years of playing safe never could have. I learned that failure doesn't kill you, it refines you. I learned that embarrassment is temporary but regret is forever. I learned that the people who judge you for trying and failing weren't rooting for you anyway. I learned that courage isn't about not being afraid, it's about being terrified and doing it anyway. About a year into this new life, something unexpected happened. I was having coffee with an old colleague who was still at the corporate job I'd left. We were catching up, and they said something that stuck with me. You know, you're different now. You're like, bigger somehow. Not physically, but your presence. You take up more space. You seem more yourself. And I realized that's exactly what had happened. For 10 years, I'd been trying to make myself smaller, quieter, more palatable. I'd been shrinking to fit into spaces that were never meant for me. But when I finally stopped playing small, when I finally started showing up fully as myself, ambitious, intense, vision-filled, sometimes too much, I didn't drive people away like I'd feared. I attracted different people, better people, people who weren't intimidated by my dreams, people who were inspired by them, people who were on their own journey from small to big and needed to see someone else doing it too. I started getting messages from people I barely knew saying things like, "Watching you go for it gave me the courage to start my own thing," or "I quit my job because you showed me it was possible," or "Thank you for being living proof that it's never too late." And I realized that playing small doesn't just rob you, it robs everyone who needs to see someone be brave. When you dim your light to make others comfortable, you deprive the world of what you're meant to contribute. Your playing small serves no one. So here's what I want to tell you, especially if you're where I was. If you've been making your dreams smaller to make other people comfortable. If you've been playing it safe and calling it being smart. If you've been waiting for the right time or the right circumstances or the right permission. Playing small doesn't protect you. It destroys you slowly, quietly, in ways you don't even notice until you wake up one day and realize you don't recognize your own life. You think you're being responsible, but you're actually betraying yourself every single day. You think you're keeping the peace, but you're creating a war inside your own soul. You think you're waiting for the right moment, but there is no right moment. There's just this moment and then it's gone. And then you're at your own funeral and people are talking about all the things you could have done but didn't. The people who love you don't need you to be small. They think they do. They think you're playing small keeps you safe and keeps them from worrying. But what they actually need is to see you happy, to see you fulfilled, to see you living the life you're meant to live, even if it scares them. And the people who genuinely can't handle your bigness, who need you to stay small to feel comfortable, those aren't your people. Let them go. Make space for people who celebrate your expansion instead of demanding your contraction. Your realistic dreams are someone else's fears projected onto you. Every time someone tells you to be realistic, what they're really saying is, "Your ambition makes me uncomfortable because it reminds me of the dreams I gave up on." Every time someone tells you to play it safe, what they're really saying is, "I'm scared for you because I was scared for me and I chose comfort over courage, and I don't want to watch you do something I couldn't do." Their fear is valid, but it's not yours to carry. You don't need permission to want what you want. Not from your parents, not from your friends, not from society, not from anyone. You don't need anyone to validate your dreams or approve your ambitions or understand your vision. You need to give yourself permission to go after the life that sets your soul on fire, even if no one else gets it. And here's the hard truth. The cost of regret is far higher than the cost of failure. Failure is temporary. You fail, you learn, you adjust, you try again. Failure is feedback. Failure is growth. Failure is part of the process of doing anything worth doing. But regret is permanent. Regret is lying awake at night wondering, what if? For the rest of your life. Regret is standing at someone's funeral, maybe your own father's, maybe eventually your own, and realizing you played it too safe and it cost you everything. I'm 37 now, 2 years into living big instead of playing small. My business isn't a massive success yet, but it's growing and it's mine and it matters. I'm not rich, but I'm fulfilled. I'm not famous, but I'm free. I don't have all the answers, but I'm asking the right questions. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm figuring it out as I go. And I can look at myself in the mirror and feel proud instead of empty. I can think about my father and know I listened to his final lesson instead of his fearful advice. I can imagine my own funeral someday and know that people will say, "He went for it. He was brave. He lived fully." And that matters more than any amount of comfort or security or approval ever could. So if you're sitting there right now, playing small, making your dreams fit into boxes they were never meant to fit in, hiding your light because you're scared of being too much, stop. Right now. Stop. Life is so much shorter than you think. The time you think you have to figure it out, to get ready, to build up courage, you don't have it. None of us do. My father thought he had time. I thought I had time. We're all just making assumptions about a future that's not guaranteed. The only thing you have is right now, this moment, this choice. You can keep playing small and hoping it keeps you safe. Or you can start playing big and discover what you're actually capable of. You can keep dimming your light to make others comfortable. Or you can shine as bright as you're meant to and trust that the right people will be drawn to that light instead of threatened by it. You can keep being realistic and responsible and smart. Or you can be bold and brave and alive. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. It's terrifying and uncertain, and some people won't understand. But here's what I know for absolute certain after wasting 10 years playing small and then spending 2 years playing big. The regret of not trying is infinitely worse than any failure you'll face from trying. The pain of staying small is more destructive than any pain you'll feel from falling short while reaching high. The cost of hiding who you really are is higher than any cost you'll pay for showing up fully, even if some people can't handle it. So this is your wake-up call. Not tomorrow. Not next year when circumstances are better. Not when you're more ready or more qualified or more sure. Right now. What's the dream you've been making smaller? What's the ambition you've been calling unrealistic? What's the life you want to live that you've been too scared to reach for? What would you do if you stopped playing small and started playing to win? Write it down. Say it out loud. Tell someone. Take one small step toward it today. Not a perfect step. Not a giant leap. Just one honest step in the direction of the life you're meant to live. Because I promise you, the only thing you'll regret at the end of your life isn't the things you tried and failed at. It's the things you never tried at all because you were too busy being realistic. Stop playing small. The world doesn't need another person hiding their light. It needs you bold, ambitious, too much, fully alive you. Your father's funeral or mine or your own someday, what do you want people to say? That you played it safe or that you played big? The choice is yours, but the clock is ticking. What are you waiting for?